right, we are live. Hello, everybody. I am HP Holo / Edie Sky, depending upon where you know me from. I write books and I interview other people who write books. And today I am with Marisa Wolf talking about her newest novel, Valkyries Chosen. I always get it mixed up between Valkyrie's Choice and Valkyries Chosen. I always have to check. So, and this is, I want to say, your second or third time on the show. So welcome back.
Thank you so much. I love it here.
Well, for those who have not met Marisa yet, Marisa, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you write, where we can find your stuff.
Yeah. So, hi, I am Marisa Wolf. I'm a second generation nerd. And so I have turned it to profit. So I write science fiction and fantasy. I mean, lowercase p profit, but we're all friends here. So I write science fiction and fantasy in every little corner of the genres that I can get to. I have written for several awesome independent presses and for Baen books, which is pretty much a dream come true. So yeah, you can find my stuff on the Amazon places. Also, my very first book with Baen, Beyond Enemies, my handy prop, you can find this in bookstores. So no guarantee, but they can order it if they don't have it. And I strongly recommend support your local independent bookstore. So
yes, we love our little indie bookstores.
Oh my God, so much. Yes.
I have recently discovered, so I probably should have known about this like years ago, but there's a website called bookshop.org where you can order stuff from it, but then basically assign yourself to a specific indie bookshop. And that shop gets the credit for your purchase, even though you're purchasing it from a larger website. It's the coolest thing. So that's where I do all of my stuff now when I'm not ordering through the actual independent bookstore site. It's super cool.
Okay, let me write that down right now.
Yes, I love it. It's just bookshop.org.
Boom.
While you're writing that down, I'm actually going to go into some of my little spiels here. So we're giving away a signed copy of Valkyries Chosen. I'm going to put the link in the comments just now. If you will fill out this little form, we will pick a random winner after the show, and you will get a book.
You will. You will get a book in the next 2 months because I am moving starting this Friday. So you will get a book, but it will be probably after DragonCon.
You've been having all sorts of adventures between releasing a new book and breaking a toe and moving in the same way.
You can't only do one thing. It has to be all the things.
Yes, we're all overachievers here. I'm also putting a link in the chat to the book itself, which you should absolutely go buy and tell your friends about and whatnot. And we've got a ton of people in the comments already. So hey, Richie says, let's go, another Holo live. Melissa Oldtop is here. Melissa's one of our regulars too. Hey, we have some dude.
That's amazing. That's great.
And Richie says his local bookstore has Beyond Enemies. So
yeah, so cool.
Your local bookstore is amazing.
Yes.
All right. So, all right. Since Baen is graciously allowing us to stream to their channel, even though Valkyries Chosen isn't a Baen book, we're going to talk a little bit about your Baen stuff and go buy all the Baen books ever. So we know Beyond Enemies is out, and I have read, Jacob has read it and loved it. I am a very slow reader, and I have read this Pokemon card. I love what I've read thus far. I'm a chaotic reader. Like I started this way back when I interviewed you for it. And because I do so many interviews and like to read stuff before I'll read this much of a book and then start and read this much of another book and then do it. I've got like 50 books that I have read this much.
So when you're out of Pokemon cards, that's when you know you have to go finish books.
Yep. And I've got so many energy cards too. I'm never going to run out of that. I have like a stack. I use them for bookmarks because like what else are they good for?
What are you doing?
So many energy cards when you're playing. Anyway, what else you got going on with Baen?
So I just today got a contract for a short story that is like 98% done, which is very exciting. So this is a fun fact, y'all. This is an anthology that I get to be in with both Heather and Jacob Holo.
Oh, right? This is the one with the cover. Well, of course, it's the one with the cover.
It will have a cover. I heard a rumor that it's going to have a cover.
Okay, so I gotta explain this first. So the premise of this anthology, Baen commissioned a cover for a novel, and for whatever reason, they ended up not using the cover for that book. But it was a really cool cover.
Very cool.
So basically, they were like, you know what? We really want to use this. Let's make an anthology where we just give all the authors this cover and say, have fun with it.
Right. That's
so all of us have written short stories based upon this cover.
Yes.
So it's a really fun anthology theme. Like
Yeah.
when I write, I'm very visual, and I found like since the AI art thing started happening, like I have complicated opinions about AI art,
Yeah.
but whenever I mess around with it, I find that there are so many stupid, odd details in AI generated art that my brain latches onto them, and I get so many random little ideas. Like I start making up stories from random visuals. That's just it's candy for my brain.
Same.
And so, relatedly, this anthology theme was like, yes, it's like a whole
so much fun. Oh my gosh. And when I genuinely don't remember because it was the blur of LibertyCon. I think Jacob told me the idea for your story, which I will say nothing about on these internet streets. You can find out next June. But I was obsessed. So I am so excited to see this
It's
story.
a fun one. I just turned it in. Jacob and I co-wrote this one, and I co-wrote it as Edie Sky rather than
it's Edie Sky, Jacob Holo.
So that will give you some hint as to what the content might be like. But yeah, it was super fun. He wrote the outline, I wrote the first draft, and then he went in and Jacobified the rest of it.
Nice.
And so it was a really fun little collaboration between the two of us too. But it's going to be a fun anthology. We're going to have to do another show whenever it comes out.
Oh my gosh, yes, because Melissa, who's in the chat, Melissa wrote a story with Nick Steverson, and it's braided with Casey Azell. Yeah, so it's going to be so much fun.
We're going to have to do just a whole group for that one.
I think so, yeah.
It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, mine also a collaboration. This is actually my very first adventure with David Weber. So we wrote this story, and I am so happy to tell you it's less than 11,000 words. Like we high-fived. Like we did so good. Jason Cordova, this is his brainchild. He's amazing. He actually called to say like, you can have a few more words if you want. And I was like, no. We came in under 11K and let us have this win. This is amazing. So that's very exciting. So that is my very next Baen project. And then there are six question mark. Then there are a number of super fun projects that I'll be a little bit vague about, but that I get to continue to collaborate with David Weber, which again is a dream come true for a second gen nerd who's been reading Honorverse books since high school. So right, like just it's fine. Like one of the very first meetings I had with David, we were talking about various plotty things, and he was like, yeah, do you agree? And I was like, David, I'm so sorry. I need to just tell you that I am swinging wildly between complete fangirl and professional right now. And it's real hard to like, to keep my cool. And he laughed. He's so wonderful, right? So he just like chuckled and we continued on. But like, I was like, I can't laugh. First, I'm a terrible liar. All the writing is where all that goes. But so I couldn't like pretend like, no, I am a serious professional. I mean, also I'm not very serious, right? But I just had to name it. I was like, I'm seesawing wildly.
Pretend that seriousness in limited amounts.
This is who we are. We're so very
Yes.
So, yeah.
We're very important authors.
We are yes, we are dignified at all times. Yes. So yeah, so lots of really fun Baen stuff.
5 seconds.
Look, that was it. That's all I had. We're lucky we got that far. Good for us. High five.
Yes, high five for us.
High five. Yeah. Oh, the people in the chat. That's right, Richie. We love the Edie/Holo.
Yeah.
That's pretty great.
Oh, we got Reese in the chat too. Hey, Reese.
Hi.
Oh, I didn't actually leave that up. He says hi, guys. I clicked it and then clicked off of it.
Yeah.
But
it's real. We thought, yeah.
So yes, lots of exciting stuff coming up from Baen on your end. So everybody watch the Baen website because there are secret projects that we can't talk about. Or I guess technically we can, but I don't even know. We're not famous enough to know whether we can talk about things. Like David Weber has talked about things, but he's David Weber and has his own set of rules, whereas we little people have to wait for contracts.
That's right.
And so there are cool David Weber related things.
Cool things afoot. A Weber. There are cool things at Weber.
Yes, cool things at Weber. All right. So anyway, go read all the Baen stuff.
The Baen stuff, yes.
So the book we're actually here to talk about is not a Baen book. It is released by Hit World Press.
Correct.
And so let's talk about Valkyries Chosen.
Yeah.
So Valkyries Chosen is part of an expansive universe. It's not original to you. So I think the best thing to do is probably start by establishing, telling us a little bit about the Hit World universe itself.
Yes. So Hit World was created by William Allen Webb and Larry Hoy. And it is one of those urban fantasy worlds where anything is possible, literally. Like there are blue orangutans that come from other dimensions and speak in British accents. There are, I mean, as you do, there are giant, I think they're orange rhinoceri. Like there's werewolves, there's magic. So it's just one of those expansive, ridiculous, so much fun insanity type urban fantasies, which is my jam. I love urban fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
For
I
that,
read
right?
the first one and loved it.
Yes, Trash Man, right?
Yeah,
So
Trash Man.
that was Bill Webb, William Allen Webb, excuse me. It was his first novel. And so it's basically, it's very pulp, right? So it starts off, you're following this guy. He's an assassin for hire. Assassin is legal. Murder is legal if you have the right contracts. And then slowly everything around him gets weirder and weirder and weirder. And he realizes, oh, I thought this was a normal world, but no. So things
It's definitely not normal.
Definitely not normal. And so he falls into this is no spoilers, but like he realizes some things he thought were just like skills and knacks that he had are actually magic influenced. And, you know, kind of has to decide what to do. And as if you have ever heard me talk about Beyond Enemies, you know, I really love a story where the characters think they're in one situation, but actually no, they're in an entirely different thing. So Duncan Steed, in the course of the Trash Man, switches genres entirely. Like he remains in a pulp sort of action detective-y story. However, the world around him is no longer that. It becomes urban fantasy. And so that's Hit World. So Hit World has a number of stories in it, and will continue, and it will continue to focus on both like the assassination thriller stuff, but also the like interdimensional shenanigans. And a couple years ago now, I don't do time math very well, Bill asked me, he's like, hey, I think we should do a spinoff. And I really want it to be.
This actually leads into my next question.
So do you want to ask the question? I can pause.
Are you? Well, I was going to ask. Your first experience writing in this universe was actually not this novel, but Valkyries Initiative anthology.
Yeah.
So tell that story.
Yeah. So Bill was like, "Hey, we're doing an anthology." I was like, "Awesome." He's like, "Can you give me a story in a week?" And I was like, "Yes?" Question mark. And I did. It was exciting. And then he's like, "Cool, love this story." Also, how about you write a spinoff? I've been thinking we need to have. Like, it's urban fantasy, right? There's a lot of really cool male protagonist-led urban fantasy. There's a lot of really cool female protagonist-led urban fantasy. And he's like, I think we need both. Like, it's Hit World. And I was like, heck yeah. He's like, I also like when, you know, women write women. Like, women can write men can write women. He does a great job, right? He's like, but I would like some, like, cool-ass chicks to come write cool-ass chicks. And I was like, oh, you think I'm a cool-ass chick? That's so nice. And so that was, the Valkyries Initiative was born. And so we did this anthology. I invited 14 other authors to write me a story of a strong female protagonist that isn't a strong female character because, oh my God, I hate.
I can have entire rants.
Right, me too. Let's come back to we should rant. Everyone needs a good rant. Yeah, it's ridiculous, right? So just write me a woman who is a character. That's what I want. Let her be a person. Let her do things. So these
an archetype,
right? Yes. Yeah. I don't want her to be a man with boobs. I don't want all the men around her to be stupid so that she can be smart. Like, just give me cool characters doing cool stuff, and don't make them cardboard. Like, that's all I want. And every author delivered. It was such a fun anthology. It's still one of my favorite anthologies that I've been in. I'm super biased, but also, let me be clear, I also had to read it about 8,000 times. I think literally like 20 times, and I still love it. And I feel like that says a lot.
Oh yeah.
Jeez.
That is, yeah, definitely. Because I get to the end of my own stuff, and after about 4 reads, I'm tired.
Yeah.
I always reach a point in editing where it's like, I know it's a good novel.
Yeah.
And I know readers are going to like it, but I just have I reach this threshold of F it, it's done.
Right. If I look at it again, I'm going to hate it forever. So therefore, let me just be done, please. Yes. And I still loved that anthology. So, you know, so the Valkyries Initiative anthology sets up these women who will potentially be tapped for the actual Valkyries Initiative in story. So Bill and I wrote The Spider, which came out earlier this year. And that sets up the conflict between the murder organization, LEI, and their rising rival, the Spider. And that was a really fun book because we had we each wrote 2 POV characters, and all 4 of these characters are 100% the antagonist in somebody else's story, but they are the protagonist of their own story, right?
I love those kind of characters.
Me too. So much fun. So like 2 are on the LEI side, the murder organization, and 2 are on the spider side. And they definitely think the other people are their enemies. And you don't have to read that to read Valkyries Chosen. It does set up the conflict, but knowing that some people were going to jump in for Valkyries with Valkyries Chosen, I set it up so that you can just jump in with Bryn, who is the point of view character in the. Here's what I love about Bryn. So super quick, we can talk more about the book after, but in the Valkyries Initiative anthology, I did a story called Dear Cynthia. And so Bryn Siegmund has been a recruiter for LEI for years. And so she's got HR like in her bones. And so she's on this field mission, which she's qualified for, but she's like, this is not my job. This is ridiculous. And so the entire time she's writing letters to her boss's boss, Cynthia, in her head. And hence Dear Cynthia. And they are very disrespectful, I'll say, and snarky. And this is when it's partly because I wrote the story, I wrote like 2/3 of the story, and then Word ate it. And I hadn't backed it up to OneDrive, like it didn't exist anywhere else.
I feel that. Like,
thank
in
you.
my chest.
I was so angry, but beautifully, that anger showed up in Bryn's exasperation and made it a way better, more fun story, I think. So, because I needed to curse at Word, and so instead I cursed through Bryn at Cynthia.
Yes.
And that also really solidified Bryn's voice, which was really fun. So that is the story of Valkyries Initiative.
All right. So let's talk about Valkyries Chosen. So what's the premise of Valkyries Chosen specifically?
Dun-dun-dun. So Bryn Siegmund has been offered a promotion that she can't say no to, and it involves leading a disavowed team to tackle this interdimensional threat facing her organization. So through the course of the novel, she does that. She forms a team. It does not go well, and things happen and things go sideways.
Very early too, because
very
I started
early.
reading it, like last night, and I'm reading the Word document, so I'm 3 Word document pages in, and people are already dying. So they're not, that she does not need to die, and it's like, oh no. Well, sad for her, but good for me as the reader, because I love stories like that. I love where characters are constantly in trouble.
Yeah, Bryn does not have an easy time in this novel at all, and the novel is dedicated to anyone who meets hard times with humor, because we need that, right? In these days, in all days, but in these days, and Bryn also needs that. So Bryn's response is snark and humor as she's going through some of the worst times of her entire life through the course of this book. And so she's building the team. She is trying to address a threat that truly is beyond the scope of one team. And also, it basically starts with it is a truth universally acknowledged that the reward for being good at your job is more work. This is bullshit, but accurate, right?
Yep. So, I felt that line in my soul too. Right? It's one of the biggest truths of the universe.
I do love those universal truths. Archetypes are good for some things, just not, being lazy about them. But yeah, so that's the story. So Bryn builds a team. She builds resources as best she can. There's magic, murder, mayhem. That's kind of the sum up of the book.
3 of my favorite things.
I know, right? That's why I love urban fantasy. You can have so much of that. So
nice. Got a few little comments here. We got Emily who says, howdy, hey, glad I caught you live. Hey, Emily. I've seen you online, but I don't think you've been able to make it to our shows yet. So welcome. And we got Charlie who says, hi, ladies.
Hey, Charlie.
And let's see here. And by the way, guys who are watching, if you have any questions for Marisa, feel free to pop them in the chat and we will get to them. And I'm also, when Marisa is answering the next question, going to pop the links in the chat again for those who want to sign up to get a copy of the book. Can we hear a bit about the threat they face, or is that more of spoiler territory?
No, it's a great question. It's not spoiler territory. So the spider is a loose-ish conglomeration of drug cartels, crime organizations, mafias all across the world. And throughout the course of multiple stories, you see it's and throughout the course of this, it's not really a spoiler to say it's not just our world, it's also interdimensional. So, and LEI, that's Life Enders Incorporated, BT dubs. So Life Enders, they have set themselves up as the good guy, as anybody does, right? Like, this is legal murder. This is, if you fill out the right paperwork and you pay the right fees, you can legally have people murdered. So your shitty boss, your asshole neighbor who won't stay on their side, that guy down the road who beats his dog, all off the table. Kill him. Love it. But it's hard to be a moral authority when you are a murder organization.
Right.
But but LEI feels that they are in the right, and the spider feels that LEI is untrustworthy and should not have this much power, and should be shut down. And the way the spider goes about it is very true to their name. There is a lot of trapping and flipping of agents and assets, as opposed to, like, it's not like war on war, right? It's just like, let's make our value proposition to people inside this organization, which is why the Valkyries has to exist as a disavowed team that doesn't have any direct line to LEI, so that they can get a drop on the web. And so a thing that I think we say pretty early on, and if you read the spider, you'll get it. The people in charge of LEI and the spider, respectively, the two men at the heads of these organizations, are not fully human, and not in like a fun supernatural way, but in a like, ooh, this could be a threat to all life everywhere sort of way. So the threat could be even bigger than anybody thinks, depending on what these not entirely human gentlemen actually want, because what we think they want and what they actually want, TBD. So, yes,
nice. I love these high stakes things. It's like,
me too. And it builds, right? That's one of my favorite things about urban fantasy is like, it starts, here's your stake.
Oh yeah.
But then each book you're like, oh no.
So I know the Trash Man has, your orangutan character, your orange rhino character. What are some of the crazy characters you run into in this one? Or is it more of does it focus more on the human side other than the bad guys?
It is more human, ... So, read. But we've got an unstoppable juggernaut. We've got a literal death goddess. We've got interdimensional shenanigans. We've got witch lawyers. So, I mean, if you've got a fun urban fantasy world, why would you not have a bunch of intergenerational lawyers who are also witches? I mean, why not? But the law is basically arcane anyway. Yeah, right? Yes. So we've got those. There's an intelligent wolf. Oh, there is, spoiler, but towards the end, there is a character from the spider that I've brought back who is not at all human and is so done with human shit. So done with it. But he can't get out and he gets dragged back in. I love him. And Bill actually did an illustration of him that's in the book that's like, it, not exactly, but because
is this the illustration at the very first page? Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. I saw that and was immediately like, who is this thing? I like it.
I like it, right? I love him.
I haven't met the character yet. No. I mean, obviously, because I'm 3 pages in.
3 pages in, yeah. He comes up definitely at the second half. But I love him. So he will show up a lot more because he's just so done with all of our shit and yet has to deal with it all the time. So
speaking of showing up more, how many books do you have planned in the series?
There are 3 done. Well, 2 more done for this year. So one is by Marisa Wolf, and that is called Shadows May Fall. Fully done, about to go into editing. It's so good. And that's going to tell the story of a member of the Valkyries team. So you'll see Bryn pop up like kind of in a Nick Fury role. But you'll really follow Athena, who is Melissa's character. She's amazing. That one is more, so somebody asked, would I consider urban romantasy? And no.
We get to those questions.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, but this connects.
Yeah,
this
we can go ahead and bring it in. So, Aaron, first off, Aaron says, "Hi, peeps." Hi, Aaron. Then he asks, "Would you consider it urban romantasy?"
What a good question. I love urban romantasy. This isn't. So Bryn is equal opportunity. She loves a pretty face. She admires multiple figures throughout the course of the book. She has got no time for this. It is a real bad time for Bryn. She doesn't go beyond a suggestive comment or 2. But Melissa's book, Shadows May Fall, you're getting a real good enemies to lovers.
Of course, it's Melissa.
It's Melissa. She's so good at it. But it's slow burn. It's enemies to lovers. It's if this is the kind of thing you like, you are, even if it's not the kind of thing you like, you're going to enjoy it because it's amazing. So that's really good. And then we also have done for this year, Matt Novotny has Soulmate. And that's not one protagonist, that's a crew of, this kind of sin eater, a succubus, a reincarnated sniper. Also not quite urban romantasy, but a little bit more sex in that one, because a succubus is one of the main characters. So, it's
every book in this series seems to get wilder and wilder, and I love it.
That's it. So those are planned for this year. Casey Azell and I are writing one early next year that will have a different kind of succubus in it. And we've got 3 more in the earlier stages, but they're not fully contracted yet. So, secrets.
Oh, there's still plenty to come. So
there's so much more. Yeah. So we've got like a whole season 1 arc built out. And then the end is real messy and it's going to be amazing. Does not go well for anybody, and that's my favorite kind. And then season 2 is a little TBD. The nice thing about being able to build out over the course of like a year and a half or so is we can see what readers really like and really respond to, and start to build that into year 2 or season 2.
When are the next ones coming out? Do we have
Great question. They should be about every other month. So Valkyries Chosen just came out last week. So Melissa's should be September and Matt's should be November.
So you don't have to wait long at all to get.
You don't. Yeah, you can dive right in. Yeah.
All right. So, more in the comments. We have John who says hi all. Hi, John. Okay. And then we have a question from Jeremy. That is actually a really good question that I'm surprised I hadn't asked yet. How would you describe the magic system? Because that's one of my questions. I love me some magic systems. Like whenever I find a new fantasy book, it's the first thing I ask in my brain. Like, what's the magic doing? So go for it. Yeah. What's the magic doing?
So I will say this is not a Brandon Sanderson magic system. Nor is it a lit RPG magic system. So it's more of a, let me just tell you what it is instead of what it's not. Okay. So Cabal is magic. It's an energy like wind power that just exists around us at all times. Some people are more prone to tapping it than others, but everybody has access to it. So everybody, imagine your buddy down the street who never hits a red light when he's running late. That's actually magic. So that is his knack, his connection with Cabal. So right? Yes, meet girl. But it's that sort of thing. So in the Trash Man, Steed never misses, right? He always hits what he aims at. And that is his talent. And through certain life adventures, you can broaden and tighten and deepen, not urban romantasy, but we'll get it in there, your connection with Cabal. So usually through some sort of trauma or things that are hard, you come out the other side and you get better and better. You also have to become aware of it in some way, right? So either somebody reads you into it, or you are faced with a werewolf and you realize the world is different than you thought. And so once you are more aware of it, you can become more sensitive to it. And then again, people have knacks. So Bryn, one knack that she has, she knows when she meets people what kind of connection to Cabal they have or will have, which is very helpful for recruitment, right? Yeah. So, she has other talents that you find out through. But it's never I am so overpowered that I cannot be stopped. There's always a trade-off to the power. And like any energy, it can be depleted in an area. So anywhere you walk into has a set amount of Cabal. If somebody grabs it before you can, there's nothing for you. There's nothing you can do, right? Or if you both grab the same amount, you might be in a stalemate. Or if somebody's faster or somebody, whatever. Or you can go places and mysteriously there is no Cabal. And there are many reasons that could be true. So it's a really fun, it exists. It's an energy. It is kind of like the Force. It's all there. You can use it, but it's a little trickier and sillier sometimes, and then real serious.
So how did you so in this particular setting, the knacks are the magical knacks are kind of not really infinite, but definitely varied. How did you decide to give Bryn that particular knack?
Yes. So her knacks go together in a really fun sort of way, I think. And the second one, she plays a little close to her chest throughout the story. So you'll get it You can
Mhm.
figure it out, and then she'll eventually tell you. But so for that one, I just found it really interesting, this idea of like everybody has some kind of connection, but nobody knows what theirs is really.
Mhm.
But here's this person who actually can see it, and maybe not as well as she thinks she can. So
Mhm.
like things could happen where she gets like an idea of what it is, but it could go a bunch of different ways. Like there's one, she's like, it felt like fiery to her, but that
Mhm.
could mean like he blows shit up, he's a welder. Like what is his thing? She doesn't know the exact like tiny minutia of it, but she knows the flavor of
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
And that was just really fun to play with, because then too I can like toss out other people's magic without having to do like a slow roll of it.
Mhm.
And then also still have her get really surprised,
Yeah.
usually at the worst possible moment.
So Aaron asks, is it more of a soft magic system,
Yeah.
as compared to a very detailed hard magic system? So it's
Yes.
one that's relaxing to read, is the way that I get it. Because it's
Yeah.
like, as much as I love magic systems,
Same.
sometimes I can only take so many words on a page about the
Mhm.
magic.
And I love it. I love figuring it out, right? Like the first time I read
Mhm.
Mistborn, I had so much fun being like, oh, this is what's happening.
Oh yeah.
But like after a while, you have to go and flip to the back, like, wait, what does this one do? Wait,
Yep.
what's the opposite of this one? And
Yep.
that is super fun. But sometimes, I mean, I really like when my urban fantasy is just fun. Like magic is
Oh yeah.
fun. Not for the
I have different
characters.
tiers of books
Yes.
that I like
Yes.
to read. And so sometimes I specifically pick, okay, this is my soft magic book or my
Mhm.
easy book. This is my I'm trying to curl up and go to sleep book. This is
Yeah.
my I want to feel smart book. This is this
Mhm.
book, that book,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
And it's just different levels.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is a spot on way to say it. Yeah. So this is more of a like, this is fun. Again, to be clear, it is not fun for the characters more times than not, but it's meant to be fun for the reader.
That makes it the less fun characters are having, the more fun the readers have.
Yeah, that's usually the goal, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I had another question and it just fell right out of my brain.
Oh, I hear you.
Oh yeah, we were talking about strong female characters earlier.
Yeah.
So what design process did you go through to make it so that Bryn's a badass, but
yeah.
she reads very realistically to me. Like she's a person that I could very easily like run into on the street and say hey, and then go away because I know she's probably doing assassin things.
Bad things are happening over there. Yeah.
How did you go about making her this badass who reads like a realistic person, as opposed to a badass who like has all the skills and wins all the time at everything?
Yeah. Well, one, I mean, I hate the latter, so that's easy. So my start in writing was in fan fiction. So Pern and McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern fan fiction, and it was very persona driven. So we did persona sheets. You did like stats almost. Like it feels like I've been waiting my whole life for lit RPG, honestly. But someday we'll get there someday. But you like figure out their stats. You figure out all the things about them. I don't do those anymore, but it's so built into me. I mean, like it's 25 years built into me, right?
Yeah,
So
it's part of your thought process.
It's just like how I think about them. So also like you, very visual. So first I'll like kind of bounce around different actresses. I started this process before AI art was like out there. I think it's helpful for brainstorming, but again, conflicted. Like I get the whole So usually I will go to actresses and actors and public figures and then say she's like this, but like there are tweaks. And for Bryn, it's actually a character I didn't watch the show, but it's that Vikings show. She's one of the characters from the Vikings, and so like I start with the face and I'm like, all right, what is she like? And then almost the moment that I know a story has locked in is when I hear the voice in my head, and Bryn's voice was so clear, so fast.
Nice.
Especially with that exasperation the second time I had to write her story. But it also is like, so she levels up a little bit in this book. She doesn't recognize that's what's happening to her, but it happens. And anytime a character levels up, they have to have a corresponding drawback. And that's how I think about it, right? So like, okay, here's the thing she's really good at. What blind spot does that give her? What's the trade-off? And like for Bryn, she's so confident. She knows the people around her. She can see them. She understands them, that when she is taken aback, she is knocked on her ass, right? So she does not take surprises super well. Like she'll roll with it and deal, but emotionally she ain't taking that well.
Yeah.
And she can compartmentalize that to a certain point. So that's the big thing. It's always thinking about like, what is the trade-off of this cool ass thing they can do? What are her blind spots? And then what is her voice? Because usually once they have a voice, they're so real. If I try to do something that doesn't fit them, it doesn't work. Like they're too clear in my head. So.
Do you find that your characters pretty much write themselves and you just kind of write up the incident report? I love that analogy. It's so perfect because I do that too. And the funny thing is, like, I would sound insane if I was not a writer, but my characters basically live in my head like people.
Rent free.
And it's nuts. And it's like I have in the back of my head at all times, I have characters from different stories interacting like they're at a party, and it makes for insanity.
I love when you post those though. When you're like, here's what happened today when Sebastian and so-and-so met. And I'm just like, oh my God, yes.
There's a whole little thing going on in the back of my head, and I am really glad I discovered writing because I have no idea what I would do if I did not have writing. Because there is just it is maddening but hilarious.
Yeah, that's here to keep Baen on the front burner here. So this was a short story. There was a short story I did for Chicks in Tank Tops, also with Jason Cordova. He's amazing. So Bee and Talon are the main characters in this book. Bee and Talon were main characters in the short story, and they did not shut up. So I turned in that story. I loved that story. I was so excited about it. And they're just still like, oh, and then this probably is what happened. Oh, what do you think about this? Oh, and they're like having a whole conversation in there. And I was like, whew. So it's real good. I got a chance to write this book because I don't know what would have happened.
Is there a sequel planned to that one?
In my head, yes. We'll see. We'll see how it sells. Everyone can buy copies for their friends, maybe, and I'll get to. But yes, I know exactly what happens in a second book.
They have more to say. That's always a good thing.
They're still there.
Sometimes it's infuriating to have characters like that, but at the same time, once they're going, I feel like the novels write themselves. They're so much easier to handle. Now, when you're trying to get them to do specific things and they don't want to, that's infuriating. Yeah. But at the same time, I also find that really handy when I'm writing because sometimes you're trying to force a character to do something, and the reason why they don't want to do it is because it doesn't make sense for the story. Like it doesn't feel natural, and it's kind of weird to have that dynamic going on in your head when you're supposed to be the one, in control of the world.
I'm the boss of this.
But they very much function like people with their own decision-making abilities, and it's one of the stranger parts of being a writer.
I would agree. That happened twice in this book.
Were there any areas where you had to convince the characters, yes, you must do this and this is why, or did they just generally chart their own course effectively?
Yeah, it was also so for this book, I wrote the vast majority of this book in 3 weeks, which is not usually how I would write a novel, turns out, but it's because I was writing pieces of I had an outline, a vague outline. I knew what was going to happen, and so I was writing pieces of it. But I couldn't get the beginning to come together. And it's because I was doing the wrong thing for Bryn. And it's not where she wanted to start. So I had like 9 different openings and none of them were correct. And then when I finally found the one, then she's like, okay, let's go. And it's like, words. So she was an asshole. But she was right. I think this start works a lot better. And then there was another part. There's a part soon after the low point, right? Like middle of a book, this isn't a spoiler. At the middle of any book, like the worst that could happen happens, right? So your character's in a bad place and they've got to figure out what to do. So in that bad place, I had things in the wrong order and she wasn't going through them in the way that made sense to me. And she's like, hey bitch, it's because that's not the way I should go through this. Like we got to do this thing. And I was like, oh. And again, once I put her back in the right order, suddenly all of her responses made sense. So I did not convince her at any point in time. I just had to find the right thing.
Yeah. So here's a question referring to openings, because I think openings are often some of the hardest parts of writing because, you've got to grab the reader in a limited number of pages or they're gone because especially since like we live in a platinum age of publishing, there's a lot to choose from and you got to snag people fast and keep them hard. Yeah. So how do you decide what the ideal opening is? Like, what was your process? Like when you started this, like you knew, okay, this opening isn't working. Is it working?
Totally. It wasn't though. It wasn't working. No, you're right.
That opening's not working. How do you decide when something works and what is making something not work? Do you have a
Yeah.
process that you go through, or is it just vibes?
I wish I had a process. It's vibes. There have been at least 3 times I have either left a beginning that I know isn't quite right and just kept going, or just left the beginning like in brackets and I write it at the end. Once I know what the story actually is, that's as close to a process as I get, is like go back and recheck and see like, is this the thing? This is the thing. It's usually vibes, and it's usually the characters. Like my first chapter for Beyond Enemies never changed. I knew exactly what it was. I was fairly confident about it when I sent it to Tony, but still a little bit like, oh God, because you're sending it to Tony, like, holy crap. But she really liked it, and I was like, yes. But I felt it locked in. Like that's the vibe, I guess. Like, does it feel locked in? Does it feel like this is the story you're about to get as best as the characters know at this time? Yes. And for me, it needs to be a little action, a little funny. Like that's, I think that's what I do. So once upon a time, there was a review that was like, there was just too much snarky dialogue. I'm not going to read this author. And I was like, Sweet Bear, you are correct. You should never, I'm definitely not for you. You are spot on right. Because everything I do, even if it's a very serious story, there's going to be snarky dialogue because that's how I deal with the world. And therefore that's how a fair amount of my characters do too. So,
and that's one of those that's one of the negative reviews that is actually really helpful. Because if I see a negative review that complains about snark, I'm like, heck yeah, that's my book.
This is for me. Yeah. But then for people who don't want that, they can be like, ooh, no, thank you. So that is helpful.
Yeah, I very often, especially with romantasy books and things of that nature, I very often just go to the 1-stars.
Yeah.
Stars are complaining about because I mean, the 1-star reviewers are always the most vehement haters of the book too, and so they're going to list everything that they hate. And if what they hate is a laundry list of things that I love, it's like, oh heck yeah, this 1-star review has just sold the book.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's very helpful.
So, since this is part of a larger universe, how much did you have to coordinate with Bill Webb when planning this novel, or was it pretty much just here's my world, have fun?
Yeah. Mostly that second thing. Bill has been so great. He's like, go forth, have a good time. This is why I asked you to do this. There are a couple of points that overlap, and it doesn't mean you have to read everything to understand them, but it does mean that he and I have to be aligned so that like his books don't contradict it, and I don't go and contradict something that he's like, actually I have plans for that thing. Don't blow that up yet. I need it. Don't kill that goldfish. So we didn't have that. But that was really helpful. And so we touched base a couple of times. And then there was something that I wrote that I left very vague. So it doesn't have to be true. It could just be something somebody thinks. But I was like, I actually really like this idea. Do you think we could play with it? And he was like, yes. And he got really excited about it. So that's super fun. And I was like, look, I didn't say that this is definitely a thing. I'm not locking you into anything. But the more I think about it, the more I think it'd be fun. He was like, we're putting that on the list. And then he came back like a day later, like, oh, and what about this and this and this, which is one of my favorite things about shared worlds is those moments. So
yes,
that's really cool.
Bouncing ideas off of each other.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So much fun.
But you come up with such, like, when you get 2 different writers together, you're always going to get 2 different approaches to the same thing. And that's one of the most fun parts about collaborating. Like I pretty much exclusively collaborate with Jacob. And we're married, so that's an interesting dynamic in and of itself.
The whole thing, yeah.
We also have completely opposing writing styles. We like similar content, but our processes are very different, and the way we approach story problem solving is very different.
Yeah.
And I'm very chaotic. Characters write themselves, whereas Jacob is more let's plan everything.
Fair, yeah.
Chaos, but that's
a different,
But it's a fascinating little process. It's wildly different from just writing a novel on your own.
Yes.
So, yeah. All right. Well, we are actually getting pretty close to the end. This went by fast. So I'm going to put the links in the comments again. You guys have been asking great questions, but if you have any more, please feel free to pop them in the chat. We got a few more minutes to fill. While I am doing that, though, Marisa, what you got coming up? Cons? Anything exciting?
Yes, 2 exciting things. One, I will be at Dragon Con in Atlanta, Georgia over Labor Day weekend. It is one of my favorite things in the whole year. And it is, 85,000 of your closest nerd friends all in one place. So also like John Cleese is going to be there this year. Like a bunch of Star Trek people. I like almost never get to go see them, but the fact that they exist.
Yeah, the fact that they're there is cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. Like here's how I function at Dragon Con. Last year I was on my way to a signing, and so I was like quick walking, head down, like walking fast, wearing my sunglasses. It's September in Atlanta, so it's hot. And I come around the corner, and there are 3 people who are super familiar, and it's Dragon Con, right? So I'm like, oh, they're probably people I talked to at the bar or something. And so I made eye contact, and I nodded, and I was like, oh, hey, and just kept walking. And they were all like, oh, hey. I get to the end of the block, and I realize I don't know those people. They're celebrities. They're people from like Desmond from Lost and this guy from the 100. Yeah, it was like 3 celebrities, which is why my brain said, I know these faces.
Yeah.
And I decided that meant I know these people. I did not, but bless them. They were so chill. They were just like, oh, hey. And maybe I had the same face that they were like, maybe we know this girl. We've met her somewhere.
Yeah, well, in the age of social media, though, that's a hard distinction to make, because it's like if you follow various people online, they pop up on your news feed and you see their lives. And I've actually found like there are authors that I know that I have never I've never actually met them in person, but whenever I see them at cons, I feel like I have, and I'll interact with them, and they're like, "What?"
My God.
And then we have to draw the dots together to figure out why one of us knows the other.
That's Katie Cross, she is amazing. She's an amazing YA fantasy, epic fantasy author. She's so, oh my God, she's incredible.
Yes.
Met her at Dragon Con, and we were both like, do we know each other? So like naming all these places that we've been, and we had like just missed, like we had gone to a lot of the same things, but different years. So we knew a lot of the same people, but like, we were like, okay, well, nice to meet you. And then we did that 3 more times. So like one year I remembered, the next time she remembered. And then finally like time 4, we're like, oh my God. So now every time we see each other, we're like, do I? Yep. But I love her so much, but that was exactly it. Like, it was like an internet thing that we're both like, you seem familiar. Yeah, it's so Dragon Con, Labor Day. And then I will be at Deep South Con in Helen, Georgia, during Beer Fest. So that will be super fun.
Sweet.
I know. In October of this year. And those are the cons that I got left for this year.
So what are your next writing projects coming up?
So that short story and the anthology that we are both in with our respective amazing collaborators. And then several semi-secret, semi-public projects. And then for Valkyries, because I am the series runner, I get to write. So the end of every Valkyries novel, you're going to get a little note from Bryn because she's never going to be able to entirely shake her HR background. So there'll be that at the end of Melissa's awesome novel, one at the end of Matt's. And I'm just so excited about Valkyries. So it's like Valkyries and semi-secret projects. And I'm also working on my very first fantasy novel. So that's exciting. There will be a tiny angry dragon. So
yes. How tiny? Like, how tiny is the dragon?
Yeah, like tiny, like this big, I think.
Like itty bitty, like smaller than a cat. Sold already. I love little dragons. I love them. Like the tinier, the better. Yeah. I love the idea of just these ferocious mythological beings that are this big.
Yep. And just all the anger.
Yes.
Yep. So tiny angry dragon. I love him a lot. So
no, we've got Charlie likes the idea too. She says, "Oh," and then Leah's. Oh, hey, Leah. Leah's in the comments and says, "I have no idea what that was a reaction to, but I love it.
We love it. Yes.
Yes. So all right. I started closing us up early, but we still have like 10 minutes to go. So I have random questions that I
love it. That's my favorite.
Or if you've got any fun stuff you want to talk about, this is the random
chaotic
part of the show. So what's an average writing day look like for you? Do you have a specific ritual that you follow, or is it just all chaos all the time?
Yeah. It's both. So sometimes I'm so disciplined. So writing, I'm just going to keep holding up because I love this cover like a lot. And then Baen can be happy too because this is my Baen.
That's one of my favorite book covers. I have never had a desire to have a bald head, but I look at that cover and I'm like, I could pull that off. I could at least try it.
You could. You totally could. I love it. So I love this cover. So for Beyond Enemies, I was very serious and very disciplined. I mean, serious is a strong word, but I was very disciplined. I wrote a certain number of words every day. And then when I was taking breaks, like they were mostly planned for. If I missed a day, I did not miss 2 days in a row. Like I was very on the way, because it was my first, like, I got paid for this before the book was done kind of contract. So I was like, there's no way I'm not missing this deadline. I'm going to turn in a great product. I want them to keep working with me, which thankfully seems to have worked. But so it's very disciplined. So this is my husband in the comments, Jeremy, saying chaos, and he's right. So the process for this book, so the process for Valkyries Chosen was chaos. So I was working on it for a while, like off and on. Like I said, the beginning wasn't working, but I was writing pieces. And then when it was time to write it, I was regularly doing 5,000 and 6,000 word days. The day I finished the book was a 12,000 word day. It was my first. Woo! I don't know that I will do it again on the regular, but it was chaos. I was like, don't talk to me. I can't go anywhere. It's just me and my computer. And so it'd be like, I would try to break it out to fool my brain that it wasn't that bad. So it'd be like, a couple thousand words while I drink my coffee. Now I'm gonna take a break for breakfast. Yeah, right now a couple thousand words for this. Now break for lunch. But I couldn't go anywhere because that was cheating. So that was different. But what I try to do is write at least 2,000 words in the morning, because then the rest of the day I'm like, well, at the very least, I wrote 2,000 words. But then I'm usually excited to go back and write more. So
do you when you actually do your actual writing, do you dictate, do you type, do you handwrite? What's your preferred, like, how do you get 12,000 words in a day, even on a dedicated day?
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, it was like 6 a.m. to 10:30 at night, but it was a big day. But, okay, I type. However, I tend to handwrite outlines, and every single short story I have ever written, literally, I have a plan. I've jotted down some notes. I get to a place. I'm feeling pretty good. And then suddenly it's the deadline. And sometimes it's like a week out. Sometimes it's 12 hours out. It doesn't matter. Somehow I'm here. And I don't have one near me because I usually throw it away once it's done. But it will look vaguely like this, where it's just scribbled. Some are upside down. Some are up the left side. Some are diagonal. It's just full chaotic notes of all the things, all the people that still need to show up, the things that need to happen, the whatever. And then suddenly that soothes my brain and I go back to typing. So I cannot dictate, because as soon as I hear the words out loud, I'm like, oh, it's weird. No, that's so strange. And it takes me out.
I find that the thinking process is different, because I've been wanting to teach myself to dictate. I like to, in an ideal situation, I like to write by hand because I'm a very tactile person. I have my little fountain pens and I've got my whole selection of ink. And I promise you, I look very pretentious at the coffee shop with my inks and everything else.
I love you. Like, it's amazing. Yeah.
And I find that I think a lot more methodically when I handwrite. I've begun to start typing, just because the thing is, when I handwrite, I end up spending a day or two dictating it to get it in the computer. And that's a day or two that I could spend writing. And so now I'm training myself to type straight into the computer, because after like 2 days a week of dictating or additional writing for me is basically, it's what, 2 extra months a year, basically, which for me is another novel I can write. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I have so many stories to write. I need to figure out how to do it faster. So we're typing now. And I'm trying to do dictation, but I just find that the moment I hear my words, it
takes me right out.
I don't, and I know it's a practice thing. I know the more you practice at it, the better you get. Yeah. So one day I'm going to try to write a short story solely by dictating it. But for now, it's like, no.
Yeah, I can't do it. Yeah. I find reading out loud is my best way to edit.
I love that.
Yeah. And I don't know why that does it, because it's the same freaking words, but it doesn't bother me on the back end, but on the front end.
I feel like it engages a different part of your brain, because I do the exact same thing. And if I have time, I will actually read my story forward conventionally, but then I will read it backward, a chapter at a time. Because the thing is, when you're reading forward, it's really easy to get engaged in your own story.
Yeah.
But when you're reading backward, you don't have that problem, because everything's kind of out of order and it doesn't make sense in that way. And so it makes it a lot easier to catch the actual mechanical errors.
Yep.
And it's very time consuming. So I don't do it often, especially now that I'm releasing.
On your 2-month schedule. Yeah.
But yeah, I tend to I always do at least one read aloud edit, because it's also really good for figuring out or checking the cadence too, because the thing is, most books, For successful authors, most books are going to be adapted to audio, and the cadence makes a big difference in audio. Repeated words make a big difference in audio, because there are some words that you can see them repeated in print and you just kind of gloss over them. But if you hear them a million times in an audiobook, it's like, no, it's like nails on the chalkboard.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, do you have any other cool editing techniques you use or writing planning techniques? I love these craft questions. Like, it's so neat to learn what other authors do because every author does things differently.
So here's a new thing I've started. I threw out the one for this novel. I started it with this novel to try to keep myself on track. Oh no, I might not have it here. No. Oh, I do. Okay. Haha. Okay. So this is for multiple projects. So we'll just hold up like this top one. So it's this graph paper that I have no idea where I got it from. I don't know. It's just lived in my notebook pile forever. But it has all these tiny squares. And I found that if I make a big square, every tiny square is 500 words. And so the big square is 12,500 words. And so after I finish either a 500 word, like to keep my brain going, I get to color in a square. And I have all of these multiple colored pens, right, to do it. And I started with Valkyries Chosen. I started like each day had its own color. So I could kind of see like, oh, Mondays I'm really productive. Tuesdays, not so much. That fell to chaos immediately. It was solid effort, but really it was the coloring of the square that made me happy. Like it gave my brain a little dopamine hit of like, you did a thing, you did the thing. Yes. And like when you get a big,
start doing that. That sounds so fun.
It's so fun. And you can like watch your progress go across. Anyway, so that's brand new. I imagine it's going to work for the next couple of projects and my brain's going to say, I don't like this anymore. Please never do this again. But for now it's very exciting and I love it. So that's a fun one. And then a thing that I've only had to do twice, but I'm sure will happen again, for editing, when I don't have things in the right place or there's maybe too much in the middle, which is a thing that I am good at doing. I will post-it notes and I will write the chapter and like quick bullets of what happens in the chapter and then spread them out and look at it just like that and say like, is this flow right? No. Yeah. Okay. So this actually should happen here and this should happen here. This actually should go. And then I'll like write on the bottom half of the post-it, the new thing, and then kind of read through it again. I should go through it backwards. That's a good idea.
I have something similar that I do because visuals are so helpful for me. And so I actually have a big mat where I sewed some vinyl pockets onto it. And so I've got 4 different columns and a bunch of rows, and I will write out on index cards.
Yes.
And so the main row is like each index card is a chapter, and it has bullet points like yours where it's the essentials that happen in the chapter. And I have a lot of color coding that I do where if a particular character shows up, their name is written in a specific color and stuff like that. Yeah. And I tend to aim to have a similar number of chapters in each of my novels, just because it's easier for me to organize them and visualize how they're flowing that way. And so first row is always the chapters. And then once I have the chapters set up, the second row is usually how I'm going to solve a problem that I discovered in the book. And
nice.
And I like to write outside, and so it's this like janky, nasty canvas thing that has dirt all over it. But I roll it up and take it outside with me, and it's just I can do my planning anywhere. Like I'll go to local parks and stuff.
That's awesome.
The visual itself is super, super helpful.
Yes.
So, there's an astonishing amount of visual thought that goes into writing and helping writing, even if you're not necessarily a visual artistic thinker. Yeah. All right. Well, it is 9 o'clock. So we're at the hour, and your interviews always go by super fast. So we're going to have you on again for whatever you release next.
I love it.
But yeah, thank you everyone in the comments for joining us. This was a fun time. You had some good questions. Marisa, thank you for joining me. This was super fun.
And
thank
you so
everybody.
Much,
go read Beyond Enemies. I have my copy here. Go read Beyond Enemies. Go read Valkyries Chosen. Everything Marisa has written is great. Go buy all her stuff.
Thank you. Yes. Join us in our chaos.
Yes. We love the chaos.
The chaos.
All right.